$2 million a year. Minimum. That's the floor, not the ceiling, on what one sprinter is reportedly making off a single shoe deal. No official number has ever been confirmed. The contract is sealed behind a non-disclosure agreement, and the man at the center of it has spent the last 2 years publicly complaining that it's not enough. When Justin Gatlin, an Olympic gold medalist himself, a man who has been inside this sport's financial machinery for over 2 decades, talked about this deal, he didn't call it impressive. He called it dangerous. We'll get to that. But first, you need to understand just how impossible this contract actually is. Because in a sport where a national record and a world championship gold medal might get you a mid-6-figure shoe deal if you're lucky, this one has been described as the richest in track and field since Usain Bolt retired, a man who once pulled an estimated $10 million a year from Puma alone, the single biggest endorsement figure the sport has ever produced. And Noah Lyles signed the original version of this deal as a teenager, straight out of a public high school in Virginia, before he had won a single global title, before anyone outside of track and field had any idea who he was.
Alexandria, Virginia. Not a sprinting factory, not Jamaica, not a Texas track powerhouse, not one of the California programs that churns out Olympic finalists every 4 years like it's a production line. A regular American public high school, T.C. Williams, the same school made famous by a football movie, not a track one. Most people who've heard the school's name have no idea it also produced one of the most talked about endorsement deals in the sport's history. Lyles grew up in a track family. His mother, Keisha Kane Bishop, was a competitive sprinter herself before him. His younger brother, Josephus, ran too, on the same tracks, chasing the same dream at the same time. But growing up in a track family doesn't hand you a contract. It doesn't hand you a lane at the Olympic trials. What it hands you is pressure. The specific, grinding kind, where everyone around you already knows exactly what elite looks like and exactly how far you still are from it every single day. By his senior year, Lyles was fast, genuinely fast, fast enough that agents were paying attention, fast enough that a shoe company had already noticed, but not fast enough yet to be the story, not fast enough to be anything more than a name on a list of promising high schoolers who might eventually amount to something at the next level. That distinction, promising versus proven, is where this story actually begins. And here's something worth sitting with before we go further. Adidas didn't wait for Lyles to become the story before signing him. They signed him on the strength of what he might become. That's the bet every shoe company makes with a young athlete, and most of the time, it doesn't pay off the way this one did. For every Noah Lyles, there are dozens of high school prodigies who sign early deals and quietly fade out of the sport within a few years, never becoming the headline anyone hoped for.
Here's the part that gets skipped in the highlight reels. Noah Lyles did not walk out of high school as a lock for stardom. He ran the 200 meters at the 2016 U.S. Olympic trials, the single meet that decides who gets to represent the United States in Rio. No exceptions, no wildcards. And he finished fourth. Fourth place at Olympic trials doesn't get you a plane ticket. It doesn't get you a medal. It doesn't even get you a mention in most of the coverage. In track and field, fourth place at trials means you go home and watch the games on television, just like everyone else in the country. The message from the sport's biggest stage that summer was clear. Not yet. Not you, not this time. Come back in 4 years and try again, if you're still around. Most athletes in that exact position take the safe road. They accept the college scholarship offers waiting for them. They go run for a university program with a full medical staff, a strength coach, a recovery room, and 4 more years to develop before the next trials rolls around. That's the standard path. That's the path nearly every American sprinter with Olympic ambitions has taken for decades.
Lyles didn't take it. He and his brother Josephus turned professional straight out of high school, together, signing with Adidas in the summer of 2016, becoming the first 2 American male sprinters in history to skip college entirely and go pro directly out of high school, on the same day as a pair. Think about what that actually means. No campus, no scholarship safety net, no 4 years of a university program slowly building your body and your technique with a medical team standing by. Just a shoe contract, a coach, a training group, and an entire sport watching closely to see whether a 4th place high schooler could actually be trusted with a professional paycheck and a professional expectation. That detail right there is the whole story. 2 brothers, 1 decision, no backup plan. He bet on himself before anyone else had proof he was right to. Drop a comment right now. Do you think that bet pays off, or does the pressure of skipping college catch up with him before he ever reaches a global final? Let's find out what actually happened next. But then comes the part of the story that explains why Adidas eventually decided this bet was worth doubling down on. Because the payoff wasn't instant. It took years. Lyles built himself into one of the most dominant sprinters of his generation the hard way, meet by meet, season by season. By 2023, at the World Championships in Budapest, he won 3 gold medals in a single meet, the 100 meters, the 200 meters, and the 4x100 relay. That kind of sweep doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen to athletes who fade after a rough trials finish as teenagers. Then came Paris in the summer of 2024. Lyles won the Olympic 100-meter final by the smallest of margins, 0.09 of a second ahead of Jamaica's Kashane Thompson, a finish so close it required a photo review to confirm. He crossed that mile in 9.79 seconds, becoming the fastest man alive on the sport's biggest stage while wearing a specially made pair of Adidas spikes. He also took bronze in the 200 meters that same games, competing while dealing with a COVID-19 diagnosis, a detail that only became public knowledge after the race was already over. That's not a resume that develops overnight. That's nearly a decade of building, meet by meet, from a 4th place finish at 18 years old to becoming the most dominant sprinter of his era. It's the reason the contract extension talks even happened in the first place. First number, $2 million a year. That's the figure Justin Gatlin has publicly put on Lyles' current Adidas earnings, an estimate from a fellow Olympic champion who has been inside these negotiations for other athletes, not an official release, because the actual contract has never been made public by either side. $2 million a year. Now compare that to where he started. In 2016, Lyles signed as an unproven 18-year-old with 1 disappointing trials finish to his name. There's no public figure for that first contract, but by every account from people close to the sport, it was a modest, standard entry-level deal, the kind every young pro signs, with no guarantees attached. The jump from that starting point to a reported 8-figure multi-year extension isn't just a raise, it's the sport completely rewriting what it once thought he was worth. Now the real comparison, the one against the benchmark that actually matters. Usain Bolt's deal with Puma was believed to be worth around $10 million a year at his absolute peak, the single largest endorsement figure the sport has ever produced, before or since. Lyles' extension has been publicly described by his own agency as the richest contract in track and field since Bolt retired, not close to Bolt's number, not comparable to Bolt's number, but the next entry on that very short, very exclusive list. Let that land for a second. In a sport that has produced thousands of professional sprinters in the years since Bolt walked away from the track for good, exactly 1 athlete's contract has been publicly described as taking his old spot at the very top of the sport's pay scale. Not 3rd on that list, not one of several names mentioned in the same breath, the one.
Here's the fact that gets stated calmly, because it doesn't need any help. No track and field athlete's endorsement deal has been publicly described this way, the richest in the sport since Bolt, at any point since Bolt actually retired in 2017. Not once, across nearly a decade that included multiple World Championship cycles and 2 full Olympic Games. That is not a small fact. That is a historic fact. And it places Lyles' Adidas deal in a category by itself, separate from every other sprinter currently competing, including athletes with longer resumes, more medals, and more name recognition among casual fans. And it's worth being precise about what richest actually means here, because the sport doesn't hand out that title lightly. It was Lyles' own agency, Global Athletics and Marketing, run by veteran agent Mark Wetmore, that made the claim publicly at the moment the extension was announced. Reporters covering the announcement noted at the time that it was never specified whether richest referred to total contract value or average annual salary, a distinction that matters enormously, and one the public still doesn't have an answer to. When pressed for details, Wetmore declined to comment further, citing the non-disclosure agreement. But reporters at the time pointed out that Wetmore has represented major track and field clients for more than 3 decades, including sprinters like Tyson Gay and Rai Benjamin, which puts him in about as strong a position as anyone in the sport to make that claim credibly. The exact number has stayed locked behind that agreement ever since, and by every indication, it's going to stay that way. Think about how unusual that actually is. This is a sport where results are measured to the 100th of a second, live, on television, in front of millions of people. Nothing is hidden, except this. The one number everyone actually wants to know is the one number nobody gets. Now here's the part that resolves what Justin Gatlin actually said, the reaction we opened with. Gatlin didn't warn Lyles about the money itself. He warned him about what comes attached to it. He pointed out publicly that a contract at this level means real, ongoing pressure, the kind where falling short of performance expectations can mean actual pay cuts written into the deal, not just bad headlines and disappointed fans. And Lyles himself has been remarkably open about exactly that pressure in his own words more than once. During the Paris Olympics, after winning 100-meter gold, he told reporters flatly that he wants his own signature shoe. "There ain't no money in spikes," he said, "there's money in sneakers." A comment that revealed just how aware he is of the gap between being a champion and being a genuine commercial brand. Then came the tension. Adidas invited Lyles to the shoe release event for NBA star Anthony Edwards, in the middle of Lyles' own contract extension talks, a move Lyles later said felt like the company throwing him a consolation invite instead of giving him the signature deal he'd been asking for. He didn't hide his frustration about it. And later, on a podcast, talking through that same frustration, he said something that had nothing to do with money at all, that leaving Adidas would mean losing his longtime coach, who is paid by the brand, along with his training group and his facilities. That walking away would mean, in his own words, blacklisting himself from the sport entirely. Not a celebration, not a victory lap, just a 27-year-old Olympic champion admitting, out loud and on record, that the deal that made him rich is also the deal he can't afford to leave. He put it in blunt terms on that same podcast. Track and field contracts, he explained, work something like a rapper's 360 deal. The sponsor doesn't just pay you, it touches nearly every part of your professional life. In his case, that meant Adidas wasn't just a shoe on his foot. It was the paycheck behind his coach, the funding behind his training group, the facilities he shows up to every single day. Walking away from the brand wouldn't just mean losing an endorsement. It would mean rebuilding his entire professional infrastructure from scratch, in a sport that doesn't have much room for athletes who burn bridges with their biggest sponsor. That's the tension nobody puts in the highlight reel. The richest deal in the sport since Usain Bolt, and the man who signed it still describes himself as stuck. Los Angeles 2028 is a little under 2 years away. Noah Lyles will be 31 years old at those games, competing at the first Olympics held on American soil since he was a small child, still under the same Adidas contract that's been quietly rewriting what a sprinter's shoe deal can look like since he was 19 years old. Does he finally get his own signature shoe before LA 2028, or does Adidas make him wait until after the games are over to give it to him? Consider what's actually at stake for both sides. Adidas has already staked its claim as the sport's top spender since Bolt. Walking away from Lyles now, or continuing to withhold the one thing he's publicly asked for, risks the exact kind of headline this video is built around. And Lyles has already shown he's willing to say the quiet part out loud, on camera, on podcasts, in press conferences, whenever the frustration boils over. Neither side seems eager to blink first. Drop your prediction below. I want to know what you think happens. And if you want the full story on how his brother Josephus' career turned out after that same 2016 decision, the one nobody talks about, that's the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss it.